I advocate the Zeitgeist Movement because it is the successor of Renaissance humanism. It's something nearly every ideology would like to claim, but none of the others come close. Any actual look at that school of thought demands the application of the scientific method to social processes. Even our circular city is a high-tech variation of Filaret's ideal city. 400 years ago, the application of the scientific method to social processes was a radical, controversial idea, but only because science was a radical, controversial idea. The notion that there should be some disconnect between the achievements of the scientists and the workings of government would be something unknown to people before the Counter-Enlightenment. The reason for that is that there should not be. In ages past, they didn't try to say that God should govern morality and science the physical world. God was real, not subtle, and you had to do what he wanted because there were physical consequences if you didn't. Today, we know there is no God in the physical world, and the religious institutions, in their quest to maintain relevance, sought the need to make up some spiritual world where he could exist. The systems theory approach allows no room even for that, which means that after more than 3 centuries, we are out of excuses to not behave like civilized people. Today, the establishment tries to talk about capitalism, failing to realize, or perhaps hoping you won't realize, that it was Marx who coined the term, and the system which Marx described as capitalism was very different from the kind of free markets that modern politicians describe as capitalism. It was, however, very similar to the world we have. Politicians seize on this equivocation to conclude that the state entering on the side of the rich is the same as the state not entering at all. And so they think they have some claim to naturalism or legitimacy, even when the most cursory glance at our society reveals that the modern monetary system is artificial and imposed, whether or not it has to be that way in the abstract or not. The modern economist lies about a bigger pie, or market efficiency, which just means that goods are moved to those who value them more. But the measurement for that value is money, not survival or social utility or any human measurement. So the talk about a bigger pie can only be a lie that moves goods into the hands of the wealthy. To those who think we are Marxists, I will admit we have some things in common with them, and then ask you, what is so bad about Marxism? Try to answer that question, and then ask whether that bad thing is something we have in common with them. If you look at it seriously, you will see that the extent to which Marxism is bad is the extent to which we do not follow Marxism. More importantly, if Marxism is from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, it's the first part, the from each according to his ability, that could create an injustice. The second part, to each according to his need, would by itself be only intelligent charity, and that's what we advocate. We have no labor theory of value because we have virtually no labor in the Venus Project. For those who think we advocate a totalitarian regime, I would point out that we have no need to persuade anyone by underhanded tactics. We advocate taking a computer and asking it a question that has a right answer discernible to a computer. Imagine 2 honest politicians, if there is such a thing, arguing about how best to care for people based on current understandings. If a computer were to tell them the answer, would they keep arguing? Not if they're honest. Under those circumstances, they would act. And the same is true not just of politicians, but of everyone. So there's no need to force the conclusion on anyone, nor is there any need to force anyone to live in the cities. We simply don't need their labor. Their presence there is not required to maintain its existence, as is true in any totalitarian regime. Under the Venus Project, your freedoms will be respected far better than they are here. And finally, for those who call us impractical, I ask what you mean. You can't mean impractical as in it wouldn't work. You can only mean that our leaders will not allow it. And in that sense, we agree with you. The only difference is we take the next step. If decency, equality, and justice are bad for the economy, as we all know they are, should we abandon decency, equality, and justice? Or is it the economy that's to blame? What must we do about the economy? We can only tear it down. The economy as we know it today is not handed to us by God. It began mostly in Renaissance Italy, certainly not as the result of humanism, but as the result of men like Medici, trying to find new ways to wage war, and by those who first experimented with usury in Venice. So if it's not eternal, it can be removed, and we say it should be. You have to look beyond your own life, and beyond the ignorant suburban assumption that things have always been this way, and always will be. If you do, you'll see that what we advocate is not far-fetched in the light of history or the light of the future. As for the world of today, those war wagers of the Renaissance are telling in another way. If you were to ask a person of the Florentine Republic what kind of government they had, unless they were a radical, they would tell you that they were a democracy. They would say, oh, we have some problems with the rich, but deep down, we're a democracy. But that isn't what history remembers. History remembers the Florentine Republic as essentially the feudal lands of the Medici. And I think I need only say that to make it obvious that that is how we will be remembered. And future generations will see that all our claims to democracy are little more than lies. If we want a democracy, we have to build one. And if we can think of a better idea, we have to build that too. The High Renaissance was characterized by the idea that infrastructure, architecture, and technology alone could serve as the greatest social movers, while armies and moneylenders and kings just rode the waves created by them, often taking the benefits of new technology for themselves alone. But we see that some technologies are egalitarian virtually in nature. The first printing presses printed Bibles, a book of superstition. But that act alone still turned the world upside down. The simple act of ink on a block was more important to history than all the prayers, all the kings leading hordes to conquer, and all the corrupt religious leaders. And it's worth mentioning that all those corrupt religious leaders and all the governments of the world moved to shut down the printing press at that time, and as the printing press moved on to create more radical works. The internet is our printing press, an idea which is egalitarian by its very nature, and which the non-egalitarian society seeks to subvert, control, and destroy. Our idea is simply to take that to the next level, to simply allow society to be run by technology that is naturally for the benefit of all, not to be distributed to the world by the nation with the greatest army, because the kind of technology we advocate is not easily subject to that kind of distribution, like the printing press. So the Venus Project is egalitarian simply by virtue of its infrastructure, by virtue of its technology and its science. Though we would like a Great Awakening, we don't demand it as an absolute precondition. It can follow the path of technology. It can develop like other movements in history. And that is why the Zeitgeist Movement is different from other movements which could otherwise be called utopian. And that is why I advocate the Zeitgeist Movement.